So to start off this video, I want to show you an interview that a US Congresswoman out of Maine said to the Canadian media.
If you talk to any Republican in a border state, they know how damaging this has been. They're experiencing the same border crossing problems. They are dealing with many of the same problems. Many of them just don't like to fight back with the president.
Now, I agree that some of the Republicans in Maine might not want to fight back. They're just too scared. And I do agree that Republicans are probably feeling the pain as well. But I do question on whether or not they actually understand why they're feeling the pain. Because I've done dozens of reports in the past where Republicans were basically saying that Canadians are not coming because of the exchange rate, or because they're too broke, or because of the weather. Yesterday, we got an update from Lewiston, New York. And in today's video, I'm going to update you on what's going on in the state of Maine. Also, I have some great news when it comes to the tourist industry in Canada. While the United States tourism industry is crumbling, Canada had a pretty good Q4 last year. So I'm going to go over all of this in today's video. And I'm going to start off with the first one out of the state of Maine. Let's get started.
Border crossings between Canada and the United States continue to look quieter than usual. This comes a little over a year since U.S. President Donald Trump was inaugurated for his second term, and Canadians became wary of heading south. Recently, Statistics Canada said return trips from the U.S. were down 22% in January 2026 compared to January 2025, which marks 13 straight months of year-over-year declines. One state disproportionately impacted by a drop in tourism is New Brunswick's neighbor Maine. The state has historically been a tourism destination for Maritimers, and a good deal of the state's economy relies on it. And the reduction in Canadian tourists is hurting Maine's tourism industry.
Now, before anyone has any sympathy for Maine, let me remind you what they said about us last year.
Brad Mosshart is also a longtime Kennebunk business owner. He runs F8 Photography Studio just down the road on Spring Street. He says he has lots of clients that are Canadian, and he's heard from plenty that they will continue to come.
It's just kind of a little bit, there's a hype out there, but I don't think it's going to really matter.
Karen Ramuno at Ramuno's Pizza and Grill says the rainy weekend trend hasn't helped either.
Especially when it's hitting on the weekends, because that's when everybody's off of work. The tourists, I think, have done a lot of cancellations because of the rain.
There's even talk of a boycott and fears here at home that those Canadian visitors won't come this year.
I think that those relationships are going to weather this temporary friction.
Now, all of these reports I showed you, I think they were from anywhere from May to August of last year. But I wanted to show these clips to everyone because it shows the attitude that we were receiving almost a year ago when our boycott started. One person saying it's hype, someone blaming it on the weather, and the last guy basically saying that our friendship is going to weather the storm. Well, I don't think it did. And in fact, I think it went the other way. But this last one I want to show you is probably the best one.
And so when people stop coming to Maine, particularly from Canada, from the maritime provinces, they're not hurting Donald Trump. They're not hurting the powers that be in Washington. They're hurting their friends here in Maine, whose businesses thrive and depend on Canadian traffic. And that is disappointing. You're not sending a message to Washington, and you're only hurting your friends and potentially family members who live and work in Maine.
Well, sorry to disappoint you, Governor Mills, but we have a reason not to come to your state and fund your tax revenue. It took me an hour to find this clip, and I'm going to have to save it somewhere. But the point of showing this to you is that many of the states, just like Maine and others around the border, didn't take this seriously. And now we're over a year into this. And unfortunately, I don't have any sympathy for any businesses in the States. Let me know in the comments if you agree with me on this. Let's keep going.
The statistics show that in Maine, we had a 27% drop in border crossings. And for us, that's almost 1 million people. And just to put it in perspective, our state has 1.5 million people. So to have that many less people coming across the border, whether it's Canadian tourists or people who come for shopping or family visits, it's really been doing damage to our state.
So a state of 1.5 million just lost about 1 million tourists. But I have to ask the audience, how many of you are from New Brunswick or Quebec that used to travel to Maine on a frequent basis? Because if I was from Quebec and New Brunswick, I would be pretty damn proud right now.
The reduction isn't academic. This Maine professor says there was a visible lack of Canadians in the state last year.
I ride the highway going to Portland, and normally you would see license plate after license plate with Canadian from Canadians, and I do not see those vehicles on the road much anymore. You go to the coast, the same thing. Bars have seats. Last summer you could find a table. You didn't have to queue up on a restaurant because the consumer numbers had dropped tremendously.
Were those on sunny days as well? Because according to this woman, she says we're avoiding only on the rainy days. I guess her assessment was a bit off. Just saying.
Several policies implemented by the Trump administration have strained relations between the United States and Canada and impacted pocketbooks on both sides of the border.
If you talk to any Republican in a border state, they know how damaging this has been. They're experiencing the same border crossing problems. They are dealing with many of the same problems. Many of them just don't like to fight back with the president.
While Republicans may privately be criticizing the president, Tijerina doesn't think there will be any significant reversal from the Trump administration.
I would say that the Trump administration is not going to move the needle, and they're going to stick to their set trajectory. I don't think that they worry a lot about what happens to Maine.
You are not in a unique situation. The orange guy and his administration doesn't care about anybody, let alone Maine. I mean, hell, I'm just going to say it. I mean, I don't think anybody in the world or anybody watching this report right now that is outside of the United States really cares what happens in Maine right now. Or any other state that was so used to us Canadians coming down and, funding your tax revenue. We have to take care of ourselves because, your president went batshit crazy. So it's up to the U.S. citizens and the state of Maine and everybody in the, within the borders to try to figure out something to, fix this problem. Because until that happens, I would not expect any Canadians to come back, at least anytime soon. Now, before I move on to the story about Canada's improving tourism industry, I want to give a shout out to Terrence, who took this photo near Skaha Lake near Penticton. Now, if you haven't been to the interior of BC, Skaha Lake connects to Okanagan Lake, but the water flow goes from Okanagan Lake into Skaha. And there is a channel that goes through Penticton. You can start at Okanagan Lake and you will end up in Skaha Lake. Kind of like what these people are doing on the inflatable boats. But anytime somebody mentions Penticton or Skaha Lake or even Okanagan Lake, I always think about my missing Vancouver Canucks Velcro wallet because I lost it in the river. Why did I have it in my pocket when I was in a river? I have no idea. I wasn't the brightest kid, I guess. But I want to thank you, Terrence, for sending this photo and bringing back a good memory. Even though I lost my wallet, I still remember I had a lot of fun. Okay, let's get to this next report on Canadian tourism. Sounds a lot better than the US one.
New data from Stats Canada released this morning is giving us a look at how the tourism sector is faring, showing both a rise in international visitors and domestic travel in the fourth quarter of 2025. To break down the report, let's bring in CTV Kamal Karmali. So Kamal, talk to us about some of the key takeaways of this report.
Yeah, people in the tourism industry are definitely smiling this morning, Scott, after hearing and learning about the fourth quarter results of 2025 and how the holiday travel turned out. All good news for the most part in most sectors. And the headline, as you mentioned, is that primarily international visitors are seeing a big surge in terms of what they're spending in our country as well. So let's.
I remember a comment that I received a long time ago, like probably in my early days. It was from a MAGA, of course. And they were basically saying that Canada is going to be in trouble because our tourism industry is not as good as theirs. And they also said, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but everybody around the world wants to go to the United States. We have Disneyland, the Grand Canyons, New York, Florida, all that kind of other stuff that they were saying. And then they ended their comment by saying something like, who the hell wants to go to Canada just to see maple syrup? Well, apparently a lot of people do want to see maple syrup. And a lot of international travelers are actually choosing Canada over the United States. It's strange how things turn out when a country starts to become fascist, isn't it?
Let's take a look at those numbers. What we've seen in the numbers that came out this morning is let's start on the left of your screen here. Nearly $27 billion was spent on tourism in the fourth quarter of this year. That's between October and December of 2025, including the holiday season. In the middle of your screen, roughly $20 billion was spent on Canada by Canadians as domestic tourism grew about 0.5%. But the headline on the right of your screen, it's the international visitors that are driving the growth in spending. More than $3 3.5% growth. That is the fastest pace of growth in international tourism in 2 years. So a big boost there when it comes to international visitors. And we've also seen an uptick this morning through this morning's numbers on GDP growth in the tourism sectors in most industries. Transportation grew 3.5%. Accommodation, tourism GDP grew 1%. So the number of jobs in tourism is also on the rise. We saw more than 700,000 jobs generated by tourism in the fourth quarter of 2025. That's roughly 0.5% change since the third quarter, Scott. And seeing a lot of growth in jobs as well in all sectors, food and beverage, air transportation, entertainment as well, Scott.
Now, out of that 20 billion that was spent domestically within Canada, we'll probably never get the real answer out of this. But I'm wondering, out of how much of that 20 million would have 20 billion, how much of that would have actually went to the United States? How much would have went to the state of Maine? Because in normal times, I'm pretty sure there would have been a lot of Canadians that went to the state of Maine, maybe for Christmas or, the US Thanksgiving or something like that. But unfortunately, all of that is gone now for the state of Maine. And thoughts and prayers, I guess. But north of the border, every metric that the reporter read out is on the uptrend. And one thing I'm excited for is that the tourism season hasn't even started yet. I mean, the snow is starting to melt. Well, not in Vancouver. We didn't get any. But I am really curious to see what the Canadian summer tourism season brings. I think it's going to be a good one.
So some good news for the tourism sector this morning.
And so, Kamal, talk to us about the impact and what it's showing from the numbers, the impact of the Canada-U.S. trade tensions that have been ongoing for some time, the impact it's having on tourism in this country.
Well, it's not just the trade tensions. We know that there's a fuel supply issue. We know that the war in the Middle East is playing a big role in where people are choosing to go now. And we're seeing people from the U.S. Coming to Canada, and primarily that is who is spending those non-resident visitors that StatsCan is referring to, coming from the United States, choosing to spend their money in Canada, but also a lot of Canadians saying, hey, we're not going to take that chance or spend a lot more on those flights because of the fuel prices increasing. We're going to spend our money here in Canada at home as well. So it looks like that might be the trend moving forward for at least the next little while. But the next first quarter of 2026 numbers set to come out in a couple of months' time. So we'll have to wait and see what those numbers hold.
All right, Kamal Karmali breaking down the numbers for us. Thanks, Kamal.
Anytime, Scott.
So I do want to thank the US citizens that are watching my channel right now that have made an effort to actually spend money in Canada. I know a lot of you have emailed me and saying that, hey, you're fed up with your own country and that you're making a point to have a trip in Canada. And I thank you for that, for supporting my country. In addition to the US viewers that are emailing me, I have a lot of European, Australian, New Zealand, and other areas as well that are saying, you know what, we're not going to the US this year, but we are going to visit Canada. It does humble me to see these emails coming into my inbox, and I do apologize that I'm not able to respond to every one of them. But everyone watching this video right now has to realize that 2025 is severely different than 2026. In what way? Well, 2026, we're not going to have these people that booked in 2025 and didn't want to go. Let's not forget everybody who booked before the orange guy went in the office and couldn't get refunds on their vacation, so they had to go anyways. But we won't have that problem this year, which is why I firmly believe that the cross-border numbers, the percentages that we're seeing, they are going to continue to go down. And the Canadians who still went to the United States last year because they couldn't get refunds on their vacations, they're going to go somewhere this year as well. But I'm pretty sure a lot of them are not going to be picking the US. So I hope this video helps to give you guys an update on what's going on in the state of Maine. Yesterday, we had Lewiston, New York. Who knows what's going to be next? But I'll be 100% sure to make sure I report on it. But not only that, also giving you an updated pulse on what's going to be happening for the Canadian tourism industry. And like I said, my gut tells me, I think 2026 is going to be a good year for Canada. Well, that's providing that the orange guy doesn't totally screw up the oil industry for the world. If you found any value or agree with anything I said in this video, or you want to see more from a Canadian and international perspective, without the US media bias, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below. That way you'll be notified of my future videos. And if you want to see more of my videos or like wait for the cat to meow, she's here. She's just kind of pacing around right now. Check out my videos that will show up on your screen shortly. Thanks everyone. I'll catch you in the next one.